sometimes you just have to get enough faith and enough gumption or confidence in yourself, whatever you can derive it from, to do the next little thing.
Welcome back to the Running Wine Mom podcast. I'm your host, Samantha Slinsky, aka the Running Wine Mom. Today's guest is someone whose voice has resonated with nearly 1 million women online. Not because she claims to have everything figured out, but because she's willing to talk honestly about the messy, complicated, meaningful parts of life. Kendall Mariah is an author, creator, army wife, adoptive mom, and someone who speaks openly about navigating motherhood, identity, neurodivergence, ambition, and the season of life where things don't go the way we planned. Her debut book, This Little Fire of Mine, explores what she calls soul friction, that tension we feel when the life we expected doesn't quite match the life we're actually living. If you've ever found yourself questioning the path you thought you'd take, redefining strength, or learning how to hold both gratitude and grief at the same time, this conversation is going to resonate with you. So without further ado, let's welcome Kendall. Welcome.
Yay! Thank you so much for having me.
I am so excited to talk all about your book and about you. But to start each episode, we have our wine, and one of the week segment. That's where we share our favorite wine or drink about something that's been bothering us and celebrate our recent victory. So grab a glass, take a deep breath, and let's get started. So, Kendall, what is your drinking wine of the week?
Well, I have to tell you, I'm one of those people, I'm really sensitive to sulfates, so I have to be very careful. If I wasn't sensitive to a sulfate, I love a good Josh Cabernet,
Yeah, that's a good one.
but I have to be careful with those. But right now, we're going into hopefully a warmer season. And one of my favorite little traditions in the summer is to go watch the sunset on the dock at the beach with my grandmother-in-law, my husband's grandmother. And she will pour the nice glass of whatever Riesling she finds at Aldi. And I'm like, how in the world is this so good? And she's like, it's $6. But she has a lot of experience in picking out good wine. She knows what to look for. That good crisp Riesling after a hot summer day on the dock hits just right.
So I think that Aldi and Trader Joe's are owned like maybe under the same umbrella because where I am, Aldi does not have
That's what I've
wine, but
heard.
Trader Joe's does. And
Ooh,
Trader Joe's has great cheap wine. So I wonder if it's like the
yeah,
same.
I bet
I was
it's
just
similar.
talking to
Yeah.
someone, yeah, about a bourbon barrel Cabernet from Trader Joe's, and it's like so cheap and so good. So I love that.
Yeah, I
I
believe
wish
it.
our Aldi had wine though, because I'd be there. It's a little closer. So what is your complaint wine of the week?
Well, right now, my biggest complaint is how in the world did I get sunburnt 72 hours ago? And this morning I'm back in my Uggs. Like, and that sounds like so silly, but I was talking to somebody earlier. Unfortunately, my my attitude is very connected to the weather. And if I have too
Mm-hmm.
many gray days in a row, it affects me. I had a real hard time when I lived in Washington State, because it was so gray there all the time. But I was feeling so good Wednesday. I sat on my porch for a long time. I mean, I literally have a suntan line right now from how long I
Yeah.
stayed out there to right now. I don't even want to go out. It's like my plan was to work in the yard today. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, who wants to work in the yard when it was literally 34 at drop off this morning?
It was such a tease. I know,
It
was
was.
outside like all day, Monday and Tuesday. It was great. I felt the happy. I was like, oh, this is all I
Yes.
needed. And then yesterday it was snowing. I'm like,
Right.
what is happening? This is not fair.
I, th- I have friends that woke up to snow too. I think that would have sent me right over the edge.
Uh,
I would have booked a trip somewhere and just told my husband, like, sorry, me and the girl are gone. We'll see you on Monday because I'm not doing it.
Actually, I did that a couple weeks ago when there was a storm coming, the big one, and my friends were like, "Let's go
Yep.
down to Florida for a couple days." And I was like to my husband, "Can I go?" He's like, "Go." So we did for 48 hours. That was it. It was great.
Yes.
So highly recommend.
Good for you.
So what's your win of the week?
Well, right now it is a little hard. I'm having to hunt the wins. My husband's active duty military, which really sets a different tone in our life right now. And where
Mm-hmm.
we live near a base. And, obviously I can't share too much, but he's very involved with things at the moment. And that has casted a shadow on our life right now. I've had to postpone my book tour because I don't feel comfortable traveling and something were to happen. My daughter's here, staying with
Mm-hmm.
my mom or something like that. So this week's been one of those weeks that truly I've had to hunt the wind to find it. But one thing that I am excited about is because my daughter's excited, is this weekend she has dance pictures,
Mm.
and this is the first time she's doing like, she's gone from just ballet and tap to now she's doing ballet, tap, jazz, and clogging, and she's only
Cool.
in kindergarten, but we were on the way to school this morning, and it was just so sweet. She goes, "Mommy, now when I get home, they told us the day before pictures, we have to get out our costume, and we've got to do this, and then I wanna wear my hair like this," and, like, this is the phase of motherhood that I feel like I looked forward to so much, like, when
Mhm.
you're in the toddler trenches and, like, it is so hard, but she's my only one, and we are truly like little ride or die besties. Like, she's coming up with a plan, and we're talking about hairstyles, and so, like, that is a win. Like, she
Yeah.
is excited about something that I loved growing up. I was a dancer, and, you mentioned she's adopted, and so it's just really cool how, from a spiritual standpoint, like, sometimes there's those little connections that you get to have together, and so, I'm excited about us having a little girl day, photo shoot day tomorrow with her.
That's so cute. Yeah, and I have a 5.5-year-old. She'll be in kindergarten in the fall, but so I totally agree with that. Like
Okay.
I feel like this last year really just blossomed into someone who is like a little human being, and it is so cute. The
Yeah.
ideas that they have, and it's so much more like focused, and they feel proud of themselves, and I just love every
Yeah.
single second about it.
Yeah, it is awesome. I'm really enjoying it.
So let's get into you. Can you talk a little bit about yourself, about your platform, and then we'll get a little deeper in.
Yeah, so I am not somebody that had ever desired becoming an influencer, content creator, whatever we
Hmm.
wanna call it today. I am a true millennial that I've just grown up with the internet. I don't know if
Yeah.
you remember, did you ever do Zanga? Like,
Oh
back in
my
the
God,
early
I
2000s, like,
love
Zanga was the
Zanga. Oh
thing.
my God, it
Okay,
was.
yeah,
I
yeah,
did
yeah.
it too.
So, like
You just
so
unlocked a memory.
okay, okay. So, like, I was all into that. I was that friend that understood the coding of MySpace, and
Hmm.
I've always been really into social media as more like just a user hobby. And then in college, I went into college pre-law and journalism.
Okay.
And I was dating my husband at the time, and realized that he's military. And if this is going to continue to work out, there's a good chance practicing law is not going to make a lot of sense because we're
Hmm.
going to be moving around.
So
And so I
true.
pivoted into every parent's dream, the arts. But my parents are actually very supportive. My dad's a photographer, but the caveat was like, "Well, why don't you also do business?" So I triple
Yeah.
majored in business, graphic design, and photography, which now they actually have as like a degree like multimedia because media is
Okay.
so used. But,
Yeah.
10, 15 years ago when I was in
It was
college, they're like, "What are you gonna do? What are you gonna do with those 3 things?" Like, it was such a foreign concept.
right.
And so my dad was a photographer. I was following his footsteps. I was photographing weddings, finding wedding invitations with my degree, all those kind of Southern wedding culture
Right.
things. This was at the height of Pinterest back in like 2015,
Ye-
2016. You know the
I love
season.
it.
I was a bride
Yes.
myself during that time.
I got
And
married in
so,
2014, so I know.
okay, you're right on. We're same timeline
Yeah.
then. So through all of that, military spouse, we're moving around. I started building some websites and doing social media coaching for other people just because it was just my personal account, but I had like 3,000 followers on Instagram. And back
Hmm.
then, for like a personal or a business, that was a lot. I mean, even right now, that's having that amount of followers just as a small business would be great,
For sure.
And so I started helping other people, especially at this time. There was a lot of small businesses or people that really didn't want to touch social media still.
I
But I
know.
was like, if you don't have social media to millennials or younger, you're not gonna exist in 10 years, like, because that's where we look for people, that's where we find out about people. So, all of that was going on. I built a really successful business doing that, started doing brand consulting, brand strategy for small businesses or executives. I even did some consulting for some schools, and then we entered the adoption process. We adopt a baby in 100 days, which is a whole God story that is crazy. Yeah, we didn't think it would go that quickly at all. My husband deploys when she's 5 weeks old. That's 2020 now. COVID happens, and I had already kind of
Jeez.
paused my schedule because I traveled a lot for work, but I was at home with a fresh baby newborn, and it's 2020 and bored. I mean, this time of
Right.
year, 6 years ago was a bizarre time to be alive to
It
begin with,
was.
but I mean, I had nobody. I mean, it was me and an infant, and as
Mhm.
a new mom, I was terrified to interact with people. So I downloaded TikTok and I started posting more actively on my own social media pages because what else was I gonna
What
do?
else were
I mean,
we
I was doing,
doing?
like, the
I know.
bleach tutorials. Yeah, I was like, how I make my ice white Starbucks coffee at home, all those kinds of things. And I have always, since back to the Zanga days and blog days that I had in high school, talked about the hard things,
Mhm.
um, and shared openly about different struggles, whether it was infertility or, mental health, and so that was not new for me.
Right.
It just took off in 2020. I think all the stars aligned. People were at home, they were consuming social media more, and so I was speaking out about all these things, the emotions of going through adoption and my husband being employed during the COVID epidemic, all the way to, the social justice movements as now a transracial adoptive mom. I was just verbally processing. I had never had to fear my husband going for a run because my husband's Army, he runs all the time. Ahmed Aubrey was shot and killed for going on a run, and now as
Right.
the mother of a black child, it just hit me in a different way of, like, how insane that other mothers have to be concerned about this because of the color of their children's skin, and as a mother, it just hits you very differently than as a
Mhm.
bystander. It's just different. So, again, I'm processing all this online, and things continue to kind of snowball, and I pivoted out of doing that branding consulting work and have been doing social media full time for 5 years.
That's awesome. And it's so funny as you're talking, we really are on such a similar timeline. I found out I was pregnant actually with my daughter March 8th, 2020. So mine, even though you had the
Well,
newborn, I was pregnant and I had been going through fertility issues and thank Oh my God, thank God. I mean, it was a blessing in disguise that I did because those facilities were still, you were able to bring your husband to for the first, like, I think
yeah.
12 weeks. My husband was able to come. And then after that, he wasn't able to come to any of the appointments. But because they were in the fertility doctors, I guess, they made the exception during COVID for my husband to come. So he was able to come to those first few appointments, which was like, I was like, okay, I
Good.
didn't think fertility issues were going to be something I thought was a positive, but at least he got to see two
Yeah,
ultrasounds in person.
for sure,
And
for sure.
yeah, so seeing that community grow to nearly 1 million women who are connecting with that honesty, when did you realize that simply telling the truth about your life was actually the thing that people really needed most?
I think that I've always felt that that's just what I was supposed to do. I didn't know that there was a need for it.
Hmm.
I mentioned I'm neurodivergent and have recently come out online just saying that I'm autistic, and I've known that for a long time. Opening that can of worms online, especially to so many people, is opening a can of worms.
Right.
So that's just the way that I am and the way that I'm wired is to be transparent. And I do not have the social awareness to know what I should
Right.
or shouldn't say. And sometimes there's just something in my body, in my nervous system, a thought like I physically have to get it out or it will cause me a physical issue. And I just transmuted that through social media. And so that's been probably the weirdest thing is that cognitively I didn't understand that there was such a need or why it was so weird or uncommon because to me it was my normal,
Right.
like, and that's what I talk about in my book is the way that I question and approach faith and push back and all of that is who I am. And I give examples as me as like elementary student. It's just how it is for me. I thought that was normal and typical. And as an adult and talking to other women and their experiences, realizing like, other
It's
people may be having these thoughts, but they just feel crazy. They're not articulating
right.
it, or they're wondering, but that feels like a bridge too far. And
Hmm.
so I think especially now moving into a season online where there's so much that is artificial, whether
Hmm.
that is in the actual footage or imagery itself or things that are written, people are just going to continuously create things that feel real, things that
Right.
feel um, not contrived or curated. For women that are of our generation, that was probably the switch up for me is the girls that we knew as influencers in 2015, 2016, 2017. It was so curated. It was so
Oh,
perfect. It
yeah.
was so Pinterest. It was all aesthetic. And when 2020 hit, you could no longer do things aesthetically or it just felt off or out of touch. And so they kinda shut down and were like, "Oh gosh, what do I do?" And couldn't really
Hmm.
do a whole lot versus I was like, continue to do what I was always doing,
Right.
But the algorithm was like, "Oh, girl, it's your time to shine."
I
We
love that.
want, you know, the normal people wanted the realness of what was going on, but people that had perfectly curated things for a song could not make that pivot so quickly.
Yeah. Yeah, and that would have just shown like, okay, well, you were just this perfect human being and now you're showing that you're this perfectly unperfect person, which like, is kind of it shows like authenticity. So I love that I feel like there's so many people that need voices that show that we're not crazy in our minds. And that's something on my platform that I found when I became a mom. I'm like, wait, none of my friends slept. Like everybody was just like, talking about how great the newborn phase was and they were going through all these things. I'm like, I need to share this because I cannot be the only one. Like, I don't know how moms are functioning outside of
Right.
the home. And like,
Yeah.
I can't even get out of bed. But so, the world needs those voices. So then you have your book, This Little Fire of Mine. It's such a powerful title. What does that little
Thank you.
fire represent for you personally right now in this season of life?
Yeah, well, as you mentioned in the intro, I call it soul friction, where we're in these
Right.
seasons of life or moments. It could be a moment where you're in a situation where what's happening or the reaction of other people does not align with the discernment feeling. You're feeling like, "Oh, you shouldn't be saying that," or "You shouldn't be doing that," or
Right. Yeah.
as a as a Christian, it's like, "Is that what Jesus would do? Because I don't think so." Like, you feel
Yeah.
this internal friction. So it can be a moment, but it also can be a season, and that's where I'm at the moment, highlight of my career, dream publishing deal with my
So
dream,
awesome.
publisher, you know, highlight career, check off the list. Meanwhile, my husband is in some of the scariest situations of his
Yeah.
career, and it's really destabilizing for us as a family unit. And so, you know, right now there's that friction, the push and pull of, is this season going to take me out? Am I
Right.
going to kind of sit in self pity of, this is not how it's supposed to be? It's not supposed to work this way. I'm supposed to be having my moment to shine and my book tour. And I thought it would look a certain way when I reached this point in my career. Or am I going to allow this friction to be a catalyst and an illuminating
Hmm.
factor to make me sharper and brighter and more ready for whatever the next season brings?
Yeah. So true. And then can you go a little deeper into the soul friction? Because I just loved that phrase. And I know it kind of aligns right with this little fire of mine. And you just, what do you think about that? How did you figure out that word and what does it mean to you?
Yeah, so I, grew up in the church and you sing the song "This Little Fire," or "This Little Light of Mine," you know,
Yes, yes.
as a nursery school student, and I was, just identified with that, like, that made sense, like, if we are called to follow Christ, we are given this light and to shine it, to
Hmm.
bring hope to other people, to love on other people, to shine light to dark places, and as I've gotten older and I'm trying to do that, it's like, you're
Right.
trying to call out injustice, or you're trying to, help other people, show love, show that grace. The funny thing is the pushback I've gotten has always come from the church. It's not been people outside the church that are
Interesting.
intimidated by the light or the fire, but it has been people inside the church. And so the book is really me trying to, one, give women who maybe grew up in faith as I did permission to ask questions and to realize that doubt is not a bad thing as it has been pitched to you, or the idea that through the narratives I share, you can experience bad things and harmful things or just things that you thought you would never experience in your whole life and be mad at God, have a lot of feelings, and God can handle all of that. And you're allowed to
Right.
ask questions, and you don't have to sweep it under the rug and act like it didn't exist, pretend like it was never a thing. As you mentioned with like the sleep thing, you're allowed to talk about those things. But in Christian culture, that's just not often the case. And
Hmm.
so about a decade ago, I started picking up on that pattern or that feeling that I would physically get when I saw something, whether it was in real life or scrolling social media, that just kind of gave me the cringy feeling and into almost anger that would manifest up the back of my neck
Hmm.
and like a friction point. And so I just gave it a name and that I was experiencing this soul fruition and I take you through different points in my life that it's very obvious. And if you can think about them in your own life, you realize you really have a choice. I'm either
Yeah.
going to allow this friction to burn the house down and burn up this situation, burn the bridge, whatever it may be, or you can actively make the decision, okay, am I going to allow the fire to be a transformative process? Am I going to allow the fire to illuminate a new way?
Mhm.
But we have to harness it or it will burn everything down. So, yeah, that's kind of where it
Yeah.
came from.
I love that, and I do, I think well, so I think I grew up in as Roman Catholic, and it was this almost similar to what you were saying about those curated Pinterest, influencers. You looked great on the outside, everything was fine and dandy, and then on the inside, there was a lot of stuff happening, whether it's behind closed doors or in your own personal life, but, like, you just, like you said, swept it under the rug. So I love that you are pushing to be like, no, we need to talk about this. And so one of the things, so your journey to motherhood was, a little bit of a difficult road. You included fertility struggles, and then you ended up adopting. What part of that journey changed you the most as a person?
Um, the adoption process for sure. And I'll be transparent and say I've never envisioned myself pregnant.
Okay.
Part of the work for me is realizing that so much of our infertility journey has been based in my own pride of wanting to
Mhm.
prove the doctors wrong.
Yeah.
That when they told me at 22 I would probably never have a baby, I've spent the last decade trying to say, "Oh, no, but I can."
Mhm.
For my experience in life, there's never been a goal that I could not will into existence, through work or effort, whatever it may be. And so it's been so much about just trying to prove the doctors wrong. And so I like to differentiate that because there's a grief, I think, for women when you
For
have spent
sure.
so much of your life, or especially in your 20s or early on in marriage, where you envision yourself pregnant, or you envision yourself going through that process. That was never a seed planted in me.
Mhm.
And so I preface that to say, I don't think anyone should go into the adoption process as a means to an end
Mhm.
to fill a void or a hole. The adoption should be approached as a journey that's going to be lifelong. And if you're not willing to lose your life savings and never see them again, just in order to support women, then you probably shouldn't go that journey. And because of all that, the adoption process has, without a doubt, been the most transformative process of my whole life, inside
Right.
fertility and outside fertility.
Mhm.
And a lot of that comes from the education that you get, based on the stats behind why choosing women choose to place, what socioeconomic barriers are there. You learn about how there is so many systemic issues that lead to women in poverty not having other choices. And it really, for me, especially growing up in a small town in the South, expanded my mind in a way
Mhm.
that I don't think even education in a more traditional path would have worked the same,
Mhm.
because it was taken on such a personal level, and we were asked about it, and we were like, "And what would you do in this situation?" Or, "How do you approach this?" Or, um, and conversations like we had a counselor asked us what was the social demographic makeup of the area we lived in, and that's something we need to take into account. Like, if your child is gonna go to preschool or kindergarten and be the only Black child in that room, then you probably shouldn't adopt outside your race, Black or Hispanic or whatever. You should adopt the same because you don't want to put a child who's already gone through a traumatic experience through adoption into a
Right.
situation again where it's just going to add another layer. So there was just all of these areas of our life that we didn't really fully understand going into the process that adoption would touch
Right.
and make us have to consider and evaluate. And also the fact that when you have the baby then at your home, when she brought a baby home, that's not when the adoption journey stops.
Right.
That's not when the family planning stops. This, especially with the open adoption, it's going to be a journey for our whole life. It's a
Mhm.
lifetime commitment of understanding and therapy and trauma understanding for sure, without a doubt. That has been the most transformative process. And also coming to the realization that my want or desire to get pregnant was out of pride and out of proving it
Yeah.
wrong, and not because I biologically thought that that was the best idea, or is the best idea for my body.
Mhm.
But as a woman, it is really hard, and I think all women who struggle with infertility and whatever the background reason is, there's this pain point of our body can't do the one thing it's supposed to do naturally.
I know. Yeah.
And regardless of if you want kids or you don't want kids, to be told you can't do something you were always told would be so easy and natural makes you feel like a failure and
Yeah, for
like
sure.
something is innately wrong with you. So there's definitely had to be working out in that mentally because that's a big burden to carry.
I know, and it's such a hard thing in society when you're like, this is what, you were made to do. And then when you are finding out that it's not as easy, again, as everybody's sitting there talking about, and you're like, well, what's wrong with me? I definitely had those feelings as well. Another thing that, we kind of touched on earlier, you're really open about being neurodivergent, which resonates with so many women right now who a lot of women I find are finding at in their 30s are discovering that they're ADHD or other things that they were not diagnosed younger in life. What was the moment like when those things connected and started making sense for you with that process?
So I'm very fortunate and I've known that I was ADHD since the second grade.
Mhm.
So this is not a new epiphany to me. Everybody has known that about me my whole life. But I didn't choose to go on medication until 2020
Okay.
because motherhood, which is I think an access for a lot of women, where you realize I can't cope in the ways that I thought were normal. Like for me, I have
Yep.
a very delayed circadian rhythm. I keep very weird hours, and I need a certain amount of long time to recharge. And I get very overstimulated, but I also need stimulation, that weird
Mhm.
combination of things. But when you have a child, and especially when your spouse is deployed and you're in a pandemic,
Oh my gosh,
you
I can't
cannot
even
regulate
imagine. No.
in the ways that you're used to regulating when you're by yourself. And so did a lot of research, and I go into the whole story in the book of, like, my
Mhm.
crash out point, of when I decided to go on medication, and so I've taken medication off and on since 2020 because I don't always feel like I need it. Because I
Right.
lasted 27 years without it. That doesn't speak to how bad my ADHD is, because mine is real bad, but I'm very privileged and I live a lifestyle. I work from home, I have my own business, I have my own job where I'm able to cater and accommodate for my neurodivergence. It would probably be very different if I had multiple children or small children at home and I was
Mhm.
working remote or I had to work a normal job, but I've just naturally been accommodated for or accommodated myself my whole life, which is a privilege of having known I was neurodivergent for a long time because I just kinda wrote a lot of things off as being quirky or having
Right.
some weird habits. But now there's a power to better understanding because you can find information, go to a therapist and say, "Hey, I think this is what I'm dealing with. Can you help me sort it out? Help me find
Mhm.
some systems to put in place." I mean, I've known this forever and I'm still figuring it out, and especially now
I know.
knowing that I'm not just ADHD, I'm autistic, and how does that work together? Because
Yeah, and
they contradict each other in a lot of ways, but, I mean, there's things at the moment like, one thing I'm trying to do right now personally is I love stimuli, like, I love color.
mhm.
I know sad beige mom stuff is going out, but I was somebody
Thank
again
God.
in 2020 that when that was, like, at the height, I was, like, having visceral reactions to and was making
Yeah,
funny videos about, like,
I love that.
just could not get it. I'm like, "Why do you wanna look like you live in a sterilized hospital?" Like, I
Yeah.
don't understand. So, I need a lot of stimulation. I like things. I'm a thing person, trinkets
Mhm.
and collect things and all that kind of stuff. And I'm somebody that have struggled with weight my whole life. I want to say that I have a ton of clothes and shoes
Mhm.
and accessories and all those things. But I'm realizing having so much creates real issues for I can't stay
Yeah.
on top of organization, I can't stay on top of laundry. Like, my mom's like, you should not be able to go 3 weeks without washing clothes." Like, that is insane. Like,
I
that
feel
is
like
insane.
I am connecting so much to this because I'm like, "Oh god, I could go 3 weeks without doing laundry too."
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And it's not because I change 2 or 3 times a day. Like, it's
Right,
not like it's
right.
because I'm
There's
wearing the
just
same
so
outfit every
much.
day. Yeah, there's that much. So one thing I'm really trying to work through, like my spring cleaning mission is for all of us, myself, my husband, my daughter's closets, is to really try to pare down to what is best, what is my
Mhm.
favorite. And there are clothes that I have that are really nice, that I love, that I wore when I weighed 50 pounds more that I don't want to get rid of. And just my husband's like, just put it in a bag or a box and let's put it in that. Like, but get it out of your clutter vision
Right.
because that clutter adds clutter to your brain. And, for
Mhm.
someone who has an issue with organizing information in my brain, I need to get rid of as much of that as I can. And so, really trying to go through and simplify and create some systems. But it's so much easier said than done.
I agree. And so I'm sure writing the book was such a fun and vulnerable process. Was there a chapter in this little fire of mine that was particularly difficult to write?
Yeah. So, I was sexually assaulted in college and didn't tell anyone until I started writing the book.
Wow.
And no one knew the story until they read the book, and so I let my husband get a advanced copy, and he read it, my parents. It was an assault, not a R word, like so
Right.
it was traumatic, but it was not as bad as it could have been, and it
Right.
happened in 2020 at the height of people saying, "Well, what was she wearing? Where were you at?" And I was doing all the right things, and so I write all about it in the book, and there's a chapter called I'm gonna get it wrong now, as I've said too many times, like shame, sexuality, and purity culture, and how they
Mhm.
all played such a role, and how it's kind of like the unholy trinity of
Mhm.
things that plague us specifically as women. And writing it was really hard because, again, I had never told anyone, so verbalizing it loud and put it to paper felt weird, but also cathartic because enough time has passed, like I can see it from
Yeah.
1,000-foot view.
Right.
But I went back and forth on whether to ever include it or not, but based on the conversations I'm having in the book and the difficult things we're talking about, I was like, "This feels like a really important point,
Point.
an example that I'm trying to make about women not having autonomy over their body,
Mhm.
like physically, in culture, and in faith." And that was a good example how I could be doing exactly what I'm supposed to be doing, and yet still I don't
Right.
have control over it.
That's awesome. All right. Well, you have just given us so much wonderful information today, and I want to end on one question. You talk a lot about soul friction, that moment when life doesn't match the expectations we were handed. If someone listening right now feels like they're not in that exact place, the plan fell apart, the identity shifted, and they're wondering what
Mhm.
now, what would you want to say directly to that person?
You're in good company because I think I literally cannot think of one woman in my life, friend group, family, that has not had these experiences. And, I mean, our body changes as women so much, from puberty to babies to perimenopause and menopause. Like, of course, we're having identity shifts. Like, things are not going according to plan because no one talks about all these issues that we're going to have alongside the other life things that are happening,
Hmm.
if we have aging parents or we have young children. And one thing that when I have been in the darkest of dark places, and I promise I go into detail in the book, but is sometimes you just have to get enough faith and enough gumption or confidence in yourself, whatever you can derive it from, to do the next little thing. Don't feel like
Hmm.
you've got to get it all figured out. Like if you're in a dark place, like I was, sometimes the best thing I could do was get the courage to go outside for a walk by myself.
Hmm.
Like, and that was hard. But,
Yeah.
and my husband would bribe me. And granted, this, I was at the heaviest I'd ever been. I didn't look in the mirror. I didn't recognize myself. I mentally was experiencing anxiety and depression for the first time. So like, I didn't feel like myself. I didn't look like myself, like crisis, mode.
Hmm.
And my mom had walked through some similar seasons with other family members, and she was in North Carolina. We were Washington State, but she was just like, "Whatever you gotta do, Justin, to get her out of the house and get her
Right.
in the sunshine and go for a walk." And so my husband would bribe me with a 32-ounce Coke Icy from the corner store,
Blah.
from 7 He'd like, "Can I'll pick you up a Coke Icy on the way home from work, but have your
Oh,
shoes on. We'll take it to the park."
yeah.
And it would take me all day to get the nerve together to be able to
Mhm.
go outside the house because I was in
Right.
such a funk, for lack of better words. And that sounds so stupid. And you're like, how is a walk going to cure my life? But even just like 2 days ago, our world has felt like it was been turned upside down a lot in the last couple weeks. But I had 20 minutes to sit outside on my front porch when it was 80 degrees outside and sit in the sun,
Mhm.
and I felt like I was being resurrected from the dead. Like, we undervalue some of those simple things like go get in the sun, drink some water. Sounds stupid, but have you had any protein today? Because if you're neurodivergent, protein affects us very, very, very much in a different way. Like, it is so important, especially if you take medication, which this is a side plug and I'm not sponsored, but I have my new favorite thing. And if you've not tried it, you got to try it. It's called Oath. I think that's how you say it. But it's clear protein. It's clear. So
Ooh,
it tastes like just a water flavor.
okay.
Oh, it has been a game changer for me because I do not get enough protein. I need more protein. And I love to drink water drinks. But I hate the milky protein shakes. They have weird aftertaste. These do not.
Yeah, they
But
do.
it could
Oh,
be
I have
something
to
as
look into
little.
that. I need that.
Yes, it could be a simple win like that. Like, get outside, drink your drink of choice, whether that's take your glass of wine for a walk, but just get outside. And I will say, and this is might hurt some feelings because how people, probably feel on this podcast because I did too. But sometimes we have to eliminate things to figure out what the trigger was. And for me, like, I had to eliminate wine and I had to eliminate
Yeah.
caffeine, like, because especially as a neurodivergent person, they affect us so differently. And we couldn't get a good baseline for how do I actually feel
Right.
because I didn't know. Like,
You
I
didn't
had
know.
so much caffeine to get me going. And then I wanted a glass of wine or something to wind down at night. I was self medicating and that's like, you gotta get the Band-Aid off before we can address the wound. And so,
Mhm.
the pendulum kind of swings too far sometimes. And so my encouragement is just figure out what that little thing is like, can you go outside and can you go for a walk? Or is there somebody you can call to just offload
Mhm.
it? Sometimes we just
Right.
gotta get it out of our head. Like, who's the safe person you can say, I don't know who I am anymore. I don't know what I'm looking at in the mirror. Who am I? What is this? Like, what do I do? And just sometimes verbally processing it flips the switch that
Yeah.
we've at least dumped it somewhere, and we did it as kids. Like, my daughter does it, like, she gets in the car from school and, like, she does, like, this really spastic, like, wiggle and, like, scream, and then she's gotta tell me 5 things that are unrelated. She's just dumping. But as women particularly, we stop doing that because we're told we're
Mhm.
emotional, we're dramatic, like, we're in our head, but sometimes we just gotta get it out, like, let it out to somebody. And so I hope if you have a trusted friend, I really think those are the 2 biggest things I can tell you is find somebody you can just they don't even have to give you advice, and you can tell them if you don't want advice, tell them, "I'm not expecting you to say anything back. I just need to say this out loud." Send that 6-minute voice note to them while you're on your little hot girl walk outside, even though you feel
Yes.
like the death plague. But that
I
really
love
is it.
that. Yeah.
And don't you hate when it's the simplest advice that you're like, "That's the
I
hardest thing
know.
to do, literally."
But that's
The
usually what
hardest thing
works
to
the
do.
best. All right. Well, thank you so
Yeah.
much. That's going to bring us to the end of another episode of The Running Wine Mom. Kendall, this conversation really felt like the kind of honest dialogue that so many women are craving right now, the kind where we can talk about ambition, motherhood, and the messy middle without pretending everything is simple.
Yeah.
Your book, This Little Fire of Mine, is out now, and I have a feeling it's going to spark a lot of important conversations. I'll be sure to link it. And as always, thank you for spending time with us on The Running Wine
Thank
Mom.
you.
Don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with a mom who needs to hear it. You can follow me on Instagram at the Running Wine Mom _. And Kendall, where can the listeners find you?
Everywhere at Kendall Mariah, same thing. So we can keep having these conversations, online together.
I love that. Thank you so much, Kendall. This was awesome. I appreciate you coming on so much.
Thank you.
So thank you so much for joining us today. Remember, you are strong, you are capable, and you are all amazing. Until next time, keep running, keep sipping, and keep embracing the joy of motherhood. Cheers, and I'll be back next Tuesday.